This week, we are going to be talking about the upcoming upgrade for 24.11 for us and what we are running into on our test server so far. So stay tuned and we'll show you what we are working on. I'm Christopher Brandon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network.
And I'm George Williams. I'm the Next Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System. And customizing Koha and doing fun stuff with it is fun, but one of the drawbacks is that after you customize something, then Koha gets updated, and all of a sudden all of the class names have changed. Classes have been added, IDs have changed, and when you go through an upgrade, you've got to make sure anything you've customized to work with those class names and anything you've done to change the page in Koha might not work after an upgrade. And so that's what Christopher and I are both finding is there are a couple of things that are okay in 24.05 that aren't working well on our test servers as we get ready to upgrade to 24.11.
Right. And one of the big things that they're doing in 24.11 is they're doing some upgrades to some components that they rely on for Koha, one of them being Bootstrap. And this is a good move. Bootstrap is operating in two different versions, I believe, on Koha, one version in the OPAC and one in the staff client. And now they're both being upgraded to Bootstrap 5, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I was just looking to see if I could figure out which Bootstrap Koha I was using.
I think one is in 4 and the other is in 3. So one has been needing change for a while, but both are being upgraded at the same time, which is great. But there are some hiccups with that move because also with that move, more reliance on those components is being made, and so classes are being changed to accommodate that. So
and some of it most of it I really like and I appreciate. So here's my Firefox window, and you can see all of these navbar items up here in 24.05. When you shrink down at a certain point, they just disappear and there's nothing there. So those are responsive in 24.11. They stop being words and they turn into icons, and they're still there. So that's a good change. And there's tons of good changes like that come with upgrading the Bootstrap, that getting all of these things to work the way that Bootstrap is supposed to work. And so I'm looking forward to a lot of that, but it does mean there's some things I got to fix. So some customizations we've relied on that need to be updated too.
Speaking of which, I noticed when you brought up your test server, there was some issues with your menu.
Yeah, so we have this link here that goes to our Aspen Discovery OPAC, and we have this drop down here that's got helpful links that we use in our system. And if you go, those are controlled in the intranet nav system preference. So let's go. That's a system preference in here, that everything that you put in this system preference appears in the nav bar. And I've got links and I've got that drop down. And the data in our test system is exactly the same as the data in our production system. And so, here's the link that makes the OPAC button, this button here that you can barely even read. Hidden up in there, there's all of these elements in the nav bar are part of a list. and the list is just displayed horizontally instead of vertically. And so what the issue is that we need to add some styling to these. And I created a Google Doc, and we'll share the link for that with everybody. But all of these links now need this class for nav item, and that isn't there. And then all of the anchors in there. So the list element needs a class for nav item, and the anchor needs a class for nav link. Those are the essential things. So for all the list elements, you need to add nav item. For all the anchors, you need to add nav link. And then to make that little icon appear, there's a span, and you add a class to that you put that span in there and you put in a class nav link icon. And then you put your icon, which is a font awesome icon. But what'll happen is that when it's got this class called navlink icon, the icon doesn't appear until the screen shrinks below a certain width. I think it's 767 pixels. That's where the icon appears. And then when it's bigger than 767 pixels, the navlink text will appear. But you've got to have those wrapped in those spans, otherwise those classes won't work right. And you'll either always see it or you'll never see it. So if we change that whole little piece there for this one link item to add in those new classes, and we reload the page, that should fix that link. So it's styled just like the others. This drop down here is a little more complicated, and it's got the same thing where we need to add a bunch of classes and a bunch of other little stuff. And so there's the original text of that piece, but all the nav link item lists need nav item, all the anchors need nav link, and then to the anchor tag you have to add the role of button. And then there used to be a data toggle called dropdown. You have to remove that and switch it to data-bs toggle. And BS does not stand for what you think it usually does. In this case, it stands for Bootstrap. So the data toggle needs to be changed to data-bs toggle. And then there on the other elements that are in that role, it's aria expanded equals false. So I added that in there. And then I wrapped the link text in the navlink text span to make it responsive. And I added the navlink icon again to make it so that when it's below a certain width, the icon appears. And when it's wider than a certain width, the text appears. And then all of the actual drop-down elements in there, it's an unordered list. And so I added the drop-down menu dark and drop-down menu n to the unordered list element, and added the navlink class to all of the links in there. And so that, for my library, that work in there looks like this. And so again, it's all there and it all works, but it looks awful. So, but if we put those classes in there and then reload it.
Oops.
There we reloaded. And so now it looks like it does.
Nice.
For those of you that, this still doesn't look like our normal Next Search Catalog staff client, because I wrote all of this CSS to restyle the staff client, and that I'm working on. That's a work in progress, and when I've finished it, I'll update the GitHub site to get that fixed, but I'm still in the process of working on it, because a lot of these things, particularly in the header bar, a lot of that CSS broke with all of these changes to the CSS.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you did a ton of work with that CSS styling, which was awesome. We were using that, but I pulled that out temporarily out of our test server because yeah, there was an awful lot of change, and because there's so much CSS there, it's going to take some time to go through and figure out everything they did. The one thing that I ran into, I looked through some of the notes for 2411, and one of the things that they were making some changes for was for dark mode.
Right.
I don't know if it's completed yet. I haven't looked at everything myself, but they're adjusting things for dark mode, and then it was kind of funny. One of the comments in the bug, and I had to respond to it because one of the assumptions made that who's going to stylize the staff side of things. It's like, okay, well, you just made a ton of work for me. So it's like, thanks for making those assumptions. But anyways, that is the caveat to being able to have a system where you can go in and make these adjustments with jQuery and CSS. You're depending on things to be a certain way when you're targeting elements on the page, and they go and change those. And I cannot fault the programmers for this because they have to change according to the things that how the programming is progressing and the things that they have in their sites and what's on their end of things. They can't anticipate all the things that are being done after the fact.
Right.
So
well, it's not really their job to anticipate what kinds of crazy things we do.
right.
And I think if creating a dark mode and coming up with ways to change the theme inside of Koha without having to go through all that trouble to do that crazy CSS stuff, that'd be awesome if that was. We're using Aspen Discovery now as our discovery layer, and it would be nice if Koha had a system in it to change themes as easily as Aspen Discovery does.
Yeah.
Because you can create, we've got 15, 20 different themes in use at our 50 libraries. And just being able to go in there and customize it and save it, and people can go in and change people using the discovery layer can go in and change the theme to whatever they want out of those choices.
I can see that as a priority for the public side of things. I can see why it's not a priority for the staff side of things. I can't fault them on 100% on that assumption, but some of us like to have something pretty to look at on the staff side. So it's like, why not? If we can do it, we can do it. But yeah, it would be nice, if at some point they just put in some fields for stylizing, or at least colors, so, basically what you did in the root section of your CSS,
right?
That you could plug in the colors that you want, and then everything falls in line. That'd be awesome.
I have been working on updating the CSS, and here's a preview of how far I've gotten. So I made a few changes, and I'm getting it back to where I want it. And there's a bunch of it that doesn't need to be changed. It's just there's so much, it's hard to figure out what does need to be changed and what doesn't.
Right.
So I have got these worked out the way I like them. And I've got all the things going on here, but we just upgraded like a week ago, and it's been a busy week at our house. So
Mhm.
I've only made it about maybe 20% of the way through there. But as soon as I get it done, I'll update that on GitHub, and then everybody who has the GitHub site can go and download what they want to use.
I always like to refer back to episodes that we've done where we've referred to some of this stuff. Like, did we do an episode on the theming?
Yeah,
I can't find
it was
that
a
episode.
two-part one. It was two parts. In the first part, I talked about the tools that I use to come up with a
Okay.
theme that had color contrast that was good for people with visual impairments, and the different tools I use to go
There we
through
go.
and do all that work. And then the second part was, once I had those tools in place, here's what I did with it. So
I just found it. So you were referring to episode uh, season. Well, before I changed the episode to 3-digit episode tags, it was season 3, episode 24 and 25. So season 3, episode 24, we talked about helpful CSS jQuery tools, and uh, episode 25 of season 3 was customizing Koha 2211's look. So
it's been about 2 years ago.
yeah, um, so it held up that long. I
Without,
imagine,
yeah,
I
without many
imagine,
significant changes.
I imagine, and I could be wrong here, but I imagine, when you get through all your changes, if you post that on the wiki, I imagine if you hold on to the root section and change everything else, it should fall in line.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, please do share if you get that
yeah,
figured out. So in addition, and I'm not sure how much of this I can, you know, is going to be relevant to most people, but um, I will say um, there were a few cosmetic things that needed to be updated, especially for the customizations that I've done. And so, going to the test server, the menu was huge, and
yeah,
finding those fixes and making those adjustments easy enough. I mean, it's a little bit of work, but one of the things that I ran into, I have this customization where the this alert panel, basically the notifications of things that need to be addressed, lives down at the bottom underneath the buttons, and so you have to do some scrolling. And sometimes, depending on your resolution, it's going to fall off the screen. So I have that moved over here. One of the things that they've adjusted in the background is the responsive classes that they use. If I inspect this section here is all in this div where the class is column medium 3, order small 2. In the previous version of Koha, it was just simply column small 3.
right.
And so they've made some adjustments there. And so this is what I had to look for. What I've done in my modification, instead of looking for this particular classes, this is what I'm actually moving, is this div with the ID area pending. So I basically took this div, and what lives in this area normally is just this news panel. And so instead of adding that to, looking for it by that class, that div by that class, what I did was I inserted before the area news. So I'm
Right.
identifying both sections by their ID. So that's a little bit more stable, I think,
Right.
than
It'll
trying to
just
go by
stick
the
to the top
class.
of that until they change until somebody changes the name of that ID.
Right, right. So, that was a small fix that I had to do. Another thing that I noticed that happened uh, in the circulation page. And let me, so I have in the I always forget this. Let me open this up. I always forget these names. Too many
I think
things
it's
to
circulation
find.
HTML.
It's internet circulation home HTML. So I have all of this stuff sticking in there. But what, as you can see, what I'm doing here is this is that section, this row of buttons, the weekly reports, CIN
Right.
forms, CIN policies. This is all that stuff in that preference here. So that's that customized HTML. And when I looked at the test server, all of these columns were just in a single column. They were stacked on top of one another, and a little irked why that happened. But basically, what had happened, and I'll take my little customization out of here. I had to go in and put some jQuery to fix this. So oh nope, wrong one. User. So I basically had to remove a div in here. Let me comment this out, show you what it was doing. So if I refresh this page, this is what it's doing.
Yeah, that doesn't look as nice as what you had before.
Yeah. And I was copying all of their responsive classes to do that down here. But if you take a look at it, and let's see here. So what we were running into is this div has been added. Basically, it is creating this wide div. You see it spans across the page there. And that particular div is not in the 2405.
Okay.
I think they're trying to fix some consistency, and they assume whatever you're going to throw in that HTML customization is just going to be straight text or links or whatever, and not as fancy or nice as what we're doing here. So they decided, oh well, whatever you put in there is going to be wrapped in this div. And
so your jQuery just unwraps it.
Yeah, my responsive divs, which I copied from up on the previous row, doesn't do anything in there. They're conflicting, and so this one overrides.
Right.
And so everything goes in this column. So basically, what I'm doing in my jQuery is I am hunting down this particular class in this other div. So I'm identifying that main div on that page, and then finding the next div that has that particular class. And I'm taking all of the contents from it and I'm unwrapping it. So basically removing that div.
Right.
And so just one single line undoes the nice little change that they made and fixes the layout again. And cool. Now I can have it just like this row up here, which is...
It looks nice.
Much nicer, yes. So outside of that, and we don't have to go into this because it's going to be fixed by the time people see it, but I've run into an issue. There's a bug out there. In fact, well, I can mention the bug on here, but there's a bug out there that's on the test server right now where the modal for triggering holds. If you trigger a hold, the modal comes up just fine, and you can do stuff with your holds like you normally would. But one of the things that was introduced a while back is if you scan an item or check an item in that is waiting, that modal is supposed to come up again, and it's supposed to tell you that it's already waiting. Do you want to ignore it? Do you want to cancel it?
Right.
That type of thing, or reconfirm it. You could reprint the slip. Really, really handy. I was glad that they added that functionality. That is broken on the test server, because
Oh.
that particular modal, the initial hold modal, is different than the reconfirm modal. And the reconfirm modal, they forgot to put in one of the new Bootstrap references, and so it doesn't come up. And so all you see when you check that waiting hold in is a local use, which is not useful. So
No.
so they
No,
do
that's
have a bug.
actually that would I can see that causing a lot of problems. Yeah.
Yes. So they do have a bug fix for that. It is being fixed for the next version, and I am told, I'm assured that it's going to be, and I'm in the wrong thing here. I'm assured that it's going to be in the upgrade. When we do upgrade, it will be there. But that is bug 38919 that addresses that issue. So also, I noticed on the check-in that some of the things that I hide, they had this alert up at the top when you check in on the check-in screen that shows you a ton of status, a lot of information about the item, stuff that we generally don't need to know if everything's okay. And so I have some jQuery that kind of vets that out and only shows it when there's particular things that staff need to know about. So I hide that, and they've changed some references on that alert, so it's probably more Bootstrap stuff. But that broke, and so I will have to go into my jQuery and update that to fix that as well. So a
I
lot
know
of
what you're talking
cosmetic things
about.
to deal
Yeah.
with.
I know what you're talking about when you say that things that happen at check-in. I think we actually did a video on those things and how to hide those things when they're not relevant or when
Well,
you.
that was in the actual table. Let me,
Okay, and this is different.
yeah, let me
Yeah, I'd
show.
like to see that.
So when you're checking in items, and I have a test item here that I was working with, all of this up here. So this
Oh yeah.
check-in message, I basically hide this unless something that I can isolate that I know is of particular interest. Then it won't hide it. But for the most part, all of that stuff is not useful. By the way, this is the item that's on hold. If I actually,
Oh.
so that's the modal where the modal is not coming up. So if I go into the holds, you can see, okay, it is waiting. So if I
Yeah,
revert
that's not
this,
helpful. If
yeah,
you revert it, it works, right?
yep. So if I revert it and I check it in, comes up as normal. There's some new stylization in here that I've noticed. And this stuff, I don't remember. Did these yellow alerts come up in there before?
Off the top of my head, I'm not
Actually,
sure.
they might have. But yeah, some I don't know. It could just be throwing me off because of the theme that I have applied to our production server at the moment. So that comes up, but if I run it again, it should pop up and ask me if I want to confirm it, print the
Right.
slip, do I want to ignore it, do I want to cancel, and what's the reason I want to cancel it for.
Yeah,
um,
that not working right is an invitation to error.
yeah, huge error, especially since it's been ingrained in our workflow for quite a while now.
Right.
um, and there is nothing on this page indicating that it's on hold.
That's already waiting on the hold shelf. Yeah.
Correct. And it changed the shelving location to recently return, our cart
Right. Right.
terminology. So yeah, unfun, but we will get through this stuff. You know, I think the cosmetic stuff is the least of my worries. It's the workflow stuff um, that has me concerned, and so it's that modal that needs to come up. That's going to be a deal breaker for us moving forward in an upgrade. And so when you look at the bug, it does say it's a 2411 release candidate. So Lucas from Bywater assured me that it will be there when our systems are upgraded, and I'm going to hold him to that.
Yeah, and now that I know it's there, I'll make sure that it happens for us too.
Yeah, so just some things to watch out for in the upgrade to prepare for. If you customize the way we do, then you want to test thoroughly. I know that I think this is the version where acquisitions 2.0 basically occurs. There's a lot
Uh, I haven't looked
happening.
at this week's Monday Minutes yet, but I believe it was about acquisitions.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with acquisitions. I'm glad to see that that's getting some attention. I know that um, I know that there's some discussion in I can't remember if it was education or uh, it was one of the SIGs. We had a discussion about this. Cereals needs some attention. Acquisition's been getting a lot more attention since Rhonda has been on board championing for that particular module. But we need a champion for cereals because the question is whether or not cereals is still relevant. I mean, we're running into a place where physical serials are starting to die out, especially at our library. I know that. I don't know about your libraries, but
Yeah,
the physical stuff is starting to die out. And we started. Uh, what was it? 2012 on Koha, and
right.
we never got into the serials module then, and we had a lot more serials then. Um, Patterning was always an issue, and it seemed like it was just a little bit more work than just plugging it into the record. And so we opted not to do it. But the question is serials relevant? Does it? I'd like to hear in comments. Are you using serials? Do you find it to be uh, of a time saver or workflow saver when it comes to serials, or versus just putting it in the record itself?
I think there's a certain breakpoint where it becomes useful. Like when I was at Latah County Library in Idaho, the Moscow library had about 125, 130 magazines that it subscribed to. And then there were 6 branch libraries that all had, 4 or 5 serials that they subscribed to. And so at that system, it was important and useful to have the serials module set up so that you knew when things didn't show up. When you've got, like 100, that was about 150 to 160 subscriptions, it's hard to keep track of 150 subscriptions and make sure that they all are showing up when they say they're supposed to show up. And so
Mm-hmm.
being able to use the serials module and run a report so that you realize that, the Deary branch library didn't get its weekly issue of People. That's a place where that kind of thing works really well. But
Yeah.
if you've only got like a half a dozen magazines on your shelf in the library, then I would question whether it's worth the time and trouble to set up the serials module to just track 6 or 7 things. That doesn't seem like it seems like the amount of time it takes to learn and use the serials module might not be worth the amount of time it would take to just track it with like on a piece of paper and a
Right, and
clipboard.
that's the thing that I hear is a lot of libraries that aren't using it, they're still just using a sheet to mark whether things have arrived or not. And,
Right.
you know, it's that and the struggle that people have had with the predictive patterns that just kind of make it enough that they don't want to touch it. And so that so with that and the trend that I'm seeing of a lot of these serials, the physical serials going away, I see a lot more electronic serials happening these days. With those two factors, is serials going to stick around? Is it going to get attention that it needs? Or is it because of these trends that it's going to leave serials just kind of useless or
Right.
not useless, but just ignored for development?
I'm laughing because I think for somebody that's not using the serials module, you sure have a lot to say about it.
I do. Well, okay, it bugs me that we have something in Koha that we don't use, and it's like, why don't we use it? Why don't we try and use it? And so it's like, why have it there? And we've used, or I've seen other libraries repurpose other modules for their own designs.
Right.
We've had, what was it that's repurposed for displays?
The reserves collection is often
Yes.
repurposed for displays.
Yes.
I don't do that because we have a college library that actually uses reserves.
So, can serials be repurposed for something? So, there's, I see something there, and it kind of bugs me, when you have things that don't get touched, and it's like, are we holding on to things that we don't need to hold on to?
I think there are libraries using serials, so I think those libraries would. I would imagine that since they went to all the trouble to set it up, I would imagine Latah County Library is still using the serials.
I know that there are libraries using serials, but is it going to get the attention that it needs to be updated? Right. And
those libraries need to, if the libraries want to use it, they need to make sure that it gets the attention it needs.
Yeah, especially, I think, okay, if you're going to have a serials module, if it's going to be any kind of a selling point, don't you want to keep that updated? And I feel like, the trends with serials, physical serials in libraries, and how much use it's getting is just leaving everybody that is trying to use it in the dust a bit. Because I feel like I've heard the same concerns,
the same complaints,
and same complaints about the patterns for quite a while. And I'd like to see those folks get some attention and love. So,
all right,
just my 2 cents on something that I don't use.
Wow, that was 2 cents. That felt more like a quarter.
All right. Well, we've said a lot here. We've had a lot to say about 2411, and we hope that you find this useful. And until next time, which is in 2 weeks, we'll see everyone later.
Yep. Have a good week, everybody.